My name is Fred McNeil, and thank you for watching QAC TV 7. We have a program we call Thank You for Serving. There are 3,500 military veterans in Queen Anne's County. What we do every 2 weeks, we interview a veteran either from Centerville area, Kent Island area, or Sellersville area. And we talk and like to share their experiences with you, okay? This week I call him Dr. Wally Gillin. Doc, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Okay, and why don't you introduce yourself, who you are and where you live.
My name is Dr. Wally Gillin. I'm a dentist from Kent Island. I live in Cloverfields down there, and I love what I do.
And you have a good time doing it, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Now let's talk military, okay? I know you have an active dentist practice. We'll get maybe that towards the end. When did you go in the military? How old were you and what year?
I was in 1968.
Okay.
I was one of the last group of people that were drafted, and I ended up in the Marines, went right through training, straight to NOM.
How old were you?
18.
So right out of high school?
Right out of high school.
Now let's talk about the career. Paris Island basic training?
Yes.
Now, you have to describe for an Army guy what Marine basic training was like.
It is brutal. I mean, anybody who goes to any branch of the service, they want to break you down because they do not want you to go into combat and then have a breakdown there.
They want to make you part of a team. You're not an
individual.
Yeah.
And so we felt it was brutal, but you know, we all made it through it, did what we had to do, and then they send you to ITR.
Well, before we go to advanced training, any memories from basic training? I mean, going through swamps or drill sergeants in your face or that type of stuff?
Well, on the rifle range, you fire and at the bullseye.
M14s.
Yeah. One guy marks it and the other guy gets out a disc and he sticks it up to say it was a 5, it was a 4, blah, blah, blah. And so after you fire, you have to go down and replace the guys behind there. And you're only in this 3-foot wide area.
Yeah.
And the DI said, don't bring that thing down like a hatchet. You're in a narrow area. Well, the guy I was in there with started bringing it down like a hatchet. I said, watch out. And all of a sudden, he hit me in the forehead, split my head open, and I went down on my knees, blood flowing down my face. They said, we got a man down here. And the DIs are at the end of the rifle range. He looks out and sees me on my knees with blood running down my face. And he said, how did that kid get shot? Well, I didn't get shot. It was the idiot I was with. So they rushed me to sick bay. And in the Marine Corps, we have Navy doctors, Navy medics.
And the Marines is part of the Navy,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I get in there, and the Navy docs, which DI did this to you? You'll get a free pass out of the Marine Corps. I said, it wasn't. It was an idiot at the rifle range. And so they kept hammering. Come on, tell us which DI did it.
They wanted to get some DI?
And they put about 6 or 7 sutures in my forehead. And then I get back to the barracks. And the DIs were elated because they knew I could have used that as an excuse to get out of the Marine Corps and say, I'm not going to war.
Yeah.
And I said, it wasn't the DI, it was
some dumb private he was.
Dumb private with me. And so he said, well, you can take a smoking break. I said, I don't smoke. And they said, well, what would you like to do? I don't know, brush my teeth. Little did I know I'd be a dentist later.
Okay, well, my story real quickly, same thing, rifle range M14, and the rule was the DI, the weapon had to either be pointed down range or pointed down with clip out. Well, I was an idiot. I'm looking around like this DI, and like you said, he had, I forget this day what he had in his hand. He hit me in that steel pot. Doc, I was like, so, okay, basic training. Where'd you go from basic?
Basic, I went to North Carolina for ITR.
Now, explain to everybody what ITR is.
ITR is more of an advanced thing where you mock being in Vietnam because that was the focus then. And they would take one platoon out of the 4 and say, now you're going to be the Viet Cong today. And you've got blanks in your guns. Okay. And the rest of them are all going to come in. And so we're all laying in ambush. And I happen to look down and here's a copperhead crawling up towards me.
A real snake.
A real copperhead. So I kind of kicked it away. And the DI yelled, who's making all that racket? And he came over and I said, this bloody snake wants my position. He He said, oh, that's a copperhead. Be careful.
Kill you.
Well, a couple minutes later, he's right on my boot. And so I give it a kick, and it flies through the air, and he comes over and said, listen, next time that copperhead comes
Shoot it.
up, shoot it in the head. Even though it's a blank, you got a muzzle flash. And so that's what I ended up doing. And while I was in ITR, they recruited me for Ricky Recon, as we call it, in the Marine Corps.
Now, in the Army, you had, and we'll stay with your topic, you have advanced individual training, and like I became a 72 Bravo. Were you 11 Bravo?
Yeah, 0311.
Oh, so you were infantry.
Right.
With this kind of pre-Vietnam training.
Right.
Oh, Marines didn't fool around, did they?
No, and they said, we'd like you to join Ricky Recon. And I said, well, how long's the training? Well, we send you to the Army at Fort Benning, you sky jog. Then we send you out with the SEALs and you do underwater demolition.
Some serious training, serious training.
And I said, how long's the training? Because I'd already been in 5 months. And he said, 14 months. I said, that means I would have served 19 months of my 24 months.
In training.
Then what? He said, we send you straight to Nam. I said, and you're going to bring me home after 5 months? Oh, yeah. And I said, I don't believe you.
No way.
And so I stayed there, and next trip was Pendleton in California.
And what was that? What were we doing out there?
Well, Pendleton, they try to simulate as close as they can. And if you're familiar with Southern California, there's a lot of rattlesnakes out there. And so at night, we would take a group of us, and we're POWs. We have to break out of the POW camp. Then we have to go up through the valley without getting bit. And you'd be walking along with two or three guys following you, and all of a sudden you're rattlers. Right. We say, okay, back it up. We got to go a little over here.
Now, are you still in E1 at that point? Are you promoted?
No, I was E1.
Okay, so, we go basic. We go some advanced training. You're out at Pendleton. Now, what happens next?
They shipped me straight to Nam.
Oh, you went to Nam.
And I won't say the word, but there's a nasty word they call the new guys.
Okay.
And nobody wants to be around you because they're afraid you're going to screw up.
Oh, yeah. Now, where did you land in Vietnam?
I landed in Da Nang.
Okay, Da Nang.
And then I was sent out to Hill 55.
Now, tell us about Hill 55.
Hill 55 was about 10,000 Marines on it.
Oh, this is quite an installation.
Oh, yeah, it's quite an installation. Plus, we had the #1 Marine Corps sniper on that hill, Carlos Hathcock.
Yeah.
And then we would run operations out of that.
Now, explain to everybody what an operation meant.
An operation would be, there was an area that was a no man's land.
And this is the VC, the NVA were there.
Yeah, NVA and Viet Cong are really heavy there.
So this is combat.
We called it Dodge City. Okay. And we would fly in there with maybe 2,500 Marines.
From the base.
From the base. And then we would sweep through Dodge City. Well, Viet Cong aren't stupid. They just go underground, wait for us to leave, and it's business as usual. Yeah. So the first night we're there, in the Marine Corps, they have what's called killer squads. 4 Marines slip away in the jungle, and your face is painted up, and you get maybe 20 feet off the trail and see if anybody's going to come diddy-bopping down the trail.
To shoot at.
So we're there, and the squad leader comes over and says, now listen, Gillin, nobody's going to fire until you fire. So but don't you fire until you see the last man get in the killing zone.
So you let the VC walk by.
Get them in the killing zone. When they're all in there, then you open fire. So we think it's going to be a bust. And about 3:30 in the morning, we hear, ding, 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 ding. You know, these guys think they're in Times Square.
Yeah. I mean, they're just walking.
And 4 guys come down through the trail, and I don't fire. And then 6 more, I still don't fire. And they're all thinking, oh, this new guy chickened out.
What's he waiting for? Yeah.
Well, then 7 more came. Then 8 more came.
This is a good size.
And an hour and a half later,
they kept coming.
165 walked by us.
This is a battalion, or company.
And so our squad leader waited another half hour, and he came over and said, I am so glad you did not pull your trigger. I said, I didn't think we brought enough bullets to kill that many people.
Yeah. Now, did you engage them eventually, or what?
Not at that point, but we went back and told military intelligence, 165 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong just walked by us. And they told us, well, military intelligence says they're nowhere in the area. Yeah. We said they weren't ghosts that
That's an
walked by us.
oxymoron, military intelligence. We won't go into that topic. Okay.
Exactly.
So you're in Vietnam. You're in a major Marine send-off area going out. Now, were you always in the 4-man units, or were you a company side?
No, you're usually a platoon that went out, 50 guys. And I had been there 2 months, and Marine Corps was 13 months.
Okay, Army was 12.
Yeah, and so they
You got
always,
that McNamara special, you got a bonus.
yeah, he's going to burn us. So they decided to send me to Land Mine and Warfare School in Da Nang for a week. And I run into a guy who was on the plane with me. He said, you know, you and I are the last two of 165 Marines.
They'd all been killed?
I said, how do you know that? He said, I'm in the office in Da Nang. Every time a Marine gets wounded or killed and we ship him out, I look on our airport manifest. If he was on it, I cross it out. It's down to you and I. Boy, that was a wake-up call. I said, you know, I might not make it out of this place.
By the way, didn't you tell me you carried an M79 grenade launcher?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Describe to the audience what an M79 grenade. I mean, I love them. They were
Let me
light.
finish this one real
Oh, I'm sorry.
quick.
Go ahead. My bad.
After I did my week's training, which was great, but it taught me how to walk point, how to find booby traps, how to keep us out of an ambush. And so I stopped to say goodbye to that guy, and he said, he's not here. I said, what do you mean he's not here? He got wounded in a mortar attack last night, and they flew him out.
Back in base.
Yeah. So now it's 9 weeks, and I'm the last Marine out of 165, and that was a huge wake-up call. So
Those odds aren't good. Those odds
not good. Yeah. So for the next 5.5 months, I walked point.
Okay.
And I could find 30, 40, 50 booby traps in a day.
And you got good at it. How did you find it? How did you know? Did you see a string?
Well, there's certain symptoms, like you come up to a tree line in the jungle, and it's really, really thick, but there's one area that's real light.
Like clear it out.
That's not the area you're going to go through. You pull out a machete and hack your way, make your own trail.
Okay.
Well, one day, 5 or 6 guys decided that looked so much easier, and they veered off to go through that. Well, the first 2 made it through. The third one tripped the booby trap, blew off his leg, got all 3 or 4 of them.
Describe for most of the public booby trap, something they see in Hollywood. What would the VC or the NV, what would they rig up? I mean, we're talking about landmines.
What they would do is they take C4, which is explosive, and they put a tripwire out there.
Okay.
So if you pull the tripwire, that started the blasting cap, and the thing would just explode. And if you were right next to it, you're going to get hit the worst. And they did that because when Marines are moving along, they want to slow us down.
Sure.
So if somebody's wounded, you got to wait for the helicopters to fly us. In the meantime, they're getting out of there. Well, this went on for 5.5 months, and about 2 months before that, when it just about was up, I told my lieutenant, I said, this is really dumb. We got 80 pounds in our back. We're humping 50 miles. I said, Viet Cong aren't stupid. They're not going to take on 50 Marines.
No.
Why don't you load us up in helicopters, fly us to their camp, and we'll do what Marines are good at.
Okay.
And he said, well, that's a stupid idea. And I said,
Okay.
Food for thought. 2 months later, they did
it. Of course.
Well, a 3-letter agency, which I will not mention,
okay.
Guy comes out dressed as a Marine Corps colonel and trains my buddy and I with this automatic grenade launcher. What a grenade launcher, normally an M79, you cock it like a shotgun, put 1 round in, pop it up. When you fire it, it's a grenade.
Yeah.
And so this guy, the 3-letter agency invented one with a magazine of 12 rounds. So you could sit there and play Rambo.
Shoot 12 of them.
12 of them, as fast as you could pull the trigger. And so they said, now what we're going to do is land in these Viet Cong and North Vietnamese camps. And so what we would do, Mike would carry it one day and I'd carry it the next day. So we'd both get experience under fire. And what we would do is load up about 4 a.m. And we had 8 Cobra gunships, so real narrow gunships. Okay. And whenever Marines are wounded, they fly into the LZ and circle it. Anything alive, they wipe out. Okay. And once they're certain it's secure, then the medevac chopper comes in. You throw your wounded on, they're gone. And they keep circling. So when they would fly over a Viet Cong or North Vietnamese camp, they would laugh. Ha ha, more Marines got wounded, because they knew the drill. Yeah. But in the meantime, they're on the phone to us, and we got about a couple hundred of them at such and such a camp. So we would drop down in triangular formation, and we come flying over the top of the trees, and we're right in the middle of their camp. and they would just
Apocalypse.
What?
Sounds like Apocalypse Now scenes. Remember
Oh, worse.
Robert Duvall coming in.
Yeah, but they did it from way out at sea. We did it right over the top of the trees.
Okay.
And it was pretty terrifying for whoever was
I
at
bet it
the
was.
end of us,
Yeah.
because I convinced them, let's put every third round a tracer in our magazine so you can actually see the
it.
bullets coming at you. And they would just run. And then whoever carried the M79 would lob rounds over their head. So it's exploding right in front of them, so they turn around and run back towards us, which the guys with the M16s would take care of it. And we would land, wipe out a camp, gather intel, weapons, and we're gone in an hour.
Yeah, and you go back to base. So you're talking about hour operation back to base camp.
Yep.
Now let's stop the battlefield stuff. What was base camp like? I mean, we're not talking Hilton hotels here, right?
No. It was just like any other camp. You had a huge hill, and we were going to the Marine Corps decided to turn it over to the South Vietnamese Army as they were doing pullouts. Yeah. And so we were flown in there. We had been out in the bush, 10,000 Marines left, and 150 of us flew in to keep the base secure because the South Vietnamese Army didn't show up. And so Charlie wasn't stupid. Charlie, being the Viet Cong, first night,
they knew to hit
crawling through the wires,
yeah.
and they threw a Chi-Com, or Chinese grenade, into the bunker. 2 guys are on guard duty, and it puts them both out of commission. Third guy wakes up, sees the condition, grabs one guy over one shoulder, the other one over the other, runs back 50 yards, runs back, picks up an M60, and starts slicing and dicing. And so the next day, he got all these medals, a combat promotion, all these other great things. The next night, they tried it again.
They kept coming. They kept coming.
They kept coming.
Now, people who weren't in the Marines or in combat at all, describe food. Did you have sea rations? Did you get hot meals? What'd you get?
Sea rations most of the time. If we got in the rear, we could get a hot meal. But 90% of the time, and occasionally, it'd be in such a hostile area, so we can't resupply you.
Okay.
He said, you know, we're kind of hungry.
Yeah.
They said, we taught you how to live off the land. Now live off the land.
Now, what would living off the land
Living
mean?
off the land, you might shoot a snake and cut it off behind the
You'd eat
poison.
snake.
Oh, yeah. And I was a vegetarian. And so they sliced it open, and it looked like little pieces. I said, what does this stuff taste like? And everybody said, chicken.
They didn't give you enough sea rations?
No.
Really?
That would be all the time. It'd just be rare
Sometimes
occasions.
it would happen, okay.
And one time, we were doing a mission with the South Vietnamese Army, and a South Vietnamese soldier comes up and said, hey, Joe, loan me a hand grenade. I said, no problem. I gave him a hand grenade. He runs over to the river, pulls the pin, and tosses it in.
For fish.
And of course, when it explodes, all these fish float up. So he wades out there, grabs them, and then because it was my hand grenade, he wants to share the ill-gotten bounty. So I ate fish and snake were the 2 worst.
No way, no way. Now, again, that's for the people who weren't in the service. Showers?
Once in a new moon.
How often would you get a shower?
Maybe once every 30 days if you're lucky.
Every 30 days
because we might be out for a month or 3 weeks. It just depended on what the operation was.
I think most people get this Hollywood view that, you know, you're getting your hot shower, you're getting your shave, you're getting
I don't think I had a hot shower the whole time I was there.
Didn't have a hot shower?
No, you ran in there, you're happy to get clean.
Now, did you keep the same uniform on for 30 days, or you had enough uniforms?
Well, you had other uniforms, and you're in the rear, you could exchange it. But sometimes it's good to wear something that smells because it doesn't.
It blends in.
It blends in.
Yes.
One guy decided he's going to clone himself up.
Boy,
the sergeant got on his case, said, you want to be notifying people you're coming?
Yeah, they can smell it. They can smell it. Okay, so you're doing these things either in groups of 4 or big outfits. How long did this go on? Was that your full 13 months, or did you?
No. I made it down to 8.5 months. In the very last mission, they call our Operation Kingfisher, because you just drop into camp and it's all over. And so it got down. I'm chasing the last Viet Cong, and I was carrying the grenade launcher.
So you're actually running after them?
Oh yeah, and you've got to be 45 feet away.
Yeah.
And I was too close.
Okay.
Because the round's not charged. So I laid it down, pulled out a hand grenade. He runs into a bunker. and I stepped right over a 50 caliber machine gun round booby trap. They put it in a tube with a nail, so when you step on it, it just fires straight up.
Yeah.
Well, he runs in the bunker. I throw the hand grenade, and I'm still watching to see if he crawls out by any chance. I take a step backwards, and boy, that thing came right through the bottom of my boot. Picked me up like a rag doll, threw me up in the
off
air.
the ground. Were you unconscious? Or not?
Oh, I was conscious the whole time.
Conscious
and
the
I
whole time.
pulled my left leg up, and there's blood spots all up and down. Pulled the right leg up, and there's my toes dangling from my leg, and I knew they were going to have to amputate it. When anytime something bad happens to me, I say, okay, God, what's good about this?
You're in charge.
And he said, took me 1 minute, and I said, hey, boys, I'm going home alive. See you later. I'm out of here.
So you're wounded in Vietnam. Did the amputation take place in Vietnam?
Yeah.
In Vietnam.
Yeah, they did it right there.
Where? Do you remember where?
Da Nang.
Oh, you went back
They
to
flew
Da Nang.
me into NSA, Naval Support Activity.
Now, how long did that from being wounded to getting back to the United States, how long did that
2
take?
days. Oh, no.
Oh, that quick.
I was there 2 days in Da Nang, then they flew me to Guam for 12 days. So it was about 2 weeks. And then they flew me into Andrews.
Okay.
And then Andrews over to Bethesda Naval.
So how long were you at the Bethesda Naval Hospital?
About 4 months. It was February, and I got out about June.
Okay, so you're a wounded Marine, E4 at that point?
Whatever I
E3,
was
E4,
in.
wait a minute. How was the experience? What did they do? Were they rehabbing you in terms of exercising?
Well, what they did basically, because it was still bleeding and oozing, they would check me every morning.
Okay.
And then you just laid in bed all day. Well, they had a rating for different people.
Okay.
If you hit a certain rating, you could go home at night.
Oh, okay. So you're going for that rating.
So
then.
when they went down, I still oozed, and they still had to be seen by the doctors, and I was bored. So I asked the psychologist who gave me all the tests to see if I'm crazy when I get out, can you find me some work? And so he said, came back a couple days later, he said, yeah, they're going to teach you how to do the books for the officers club, the PX, and the commissary.
Oh, wow.
He said, but they're not going to pay you anything. I said, that's
Just
fine.
to keep you busy.
Yeah, and so I didn't even have a foot. I'm on crutches. So I go over there, and they teach me, and it was kind of hilarious because there were 4 gals in there, and one of them said, Wally, she had this old Fleetwood Cadillac. I have a great idea. I said, okay, Betty, what's that? I take you down to D.C. and you hold a cup to collect money. And I said, well, there's one thing missing from this thing. I said, why do I need you to go do that?
I can do that. Now, let me. Did you feel? I always ask. We've had a couple of Purple Heart people on. Did you feel you were treated well in the medical facilities?
Oh, they were great.
They were good.
They were absolutely fabulous.
Okay.
I have no complaints
You
about
were very
them.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Did they immediately affix an artificial? How does the whole process?
Well, the process goes, they try to get so you're not bleeding so much.
The oozing in the blood.
Yeah, and then they said, okay, we're going to make you a foot. And they said, it's going to take you 8 months to walk.
8 months.
I said, you got to be out of your mind. I'll
With
be
your
walking in a
personality,
week.
you can't be in it.
And she said, well, you got to walk the whole length of the gym and back with no aids. I said, I'll do it in a week. So the first day, 2 crutches. Second day, 1 crutch. Third day, a cane. The 5th day, which was Friday, I said, I'm ready to go home.
I want to go home.
And I twirled the cane, and it hurt like the devil. And I walked all the way down and back. Well, they had hired me to work accounting afterwards, and they said, you got a job here forever. Well, once I got a foot, I said, no, I got to go work construction this summer. And they said, are you crazy?
Yeah.
I said, I'm only 19. I got to toughen that baby up. I got my whole life in front of
At
me.
that point, you're 19 years old?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a kid. You're a kid.
Yeah. And so I went out and worked construction. And one of the guys I worked with was a brother to my best friend in high school, older brother. And he said, you know, Wally, you were coming down in Potomac because we did these super rich homes. He said you had a full load of stone because we did stonework, flagstone. And the dew was real wet on the side of the hill, and you went down, wheelbarrow and all. And he said, you just got up, dusted yourself
As if it
off,
was nothing.
loaded the stone, and kept going.
Kept going.
And I didn't remember the experience.
You had the amazing ability. You didn't let this bother you. My son has this favorite saying, over, next. You had the tragedy that happened, I think, in Vietnam. hey guys, my life's going on.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping. Well, let me ask you, we've got about 5 more minutes left. So where did the dental school come from?
When I was in Nam, I didn't think I was going to make it out alive, but I had this agreement I made with God. If you get me out of here alive, I swear I'll help people the rest of my life.
Good.
So I came back, landed a job in the operating room while I was in college. I'd clean up
At a
all the
local hospital,
operatories.
okay.
Hospital. In 1970, every doctor was a one-man show.
Okay.
So these guys would operate 4 days straight without ever leaving the hospital. They finally go home Thursday night, 9 o'clock, big accident in the freeway, come on in, and they would operate till 1 in the morning. And then they go in doctor's lounge and physically exhausted.
Pass out.
And 5 a.m., nurses like, come on, doc, let's do it again. And I said, I want to see my wife and kids growing up. So my buddy came to me and said, Wally, why don't you be a dentist?
Consider
You can
dentist
do
school.
payback.
Yeah.
And for 13 years in Peoria, I covered the emergency room for 4 different hospitals.
As a dentist?
As a dentist, I would go to bed, 10 o'clock, one hospital,
Where'd you go to dental school?
Loma Linda,
How about
in California.
Where'd you go to undergraduate school?
Washington. It's called Washington Adventist College. It used to be called Columbia Union.
Okay.
And then I transferred to Loma Linda in Southern California and
Got the
graduated.
dental degree.
Yeah.
And then you're doing all this emergency service.
Well, I did the emergency service, and I would get up at 10, go down, take care of a patient, go back to bed, 1 a.m., another hospital would call me, I'd run down there, and I did this for 13 years. And somebody would knock his wife's teeth out. I said, can you
had
put
to
their
do
teeth in? I said, yeah, no problem. And so I just worked my keister
Yes,
off.
you did. Well, I got to ask you, how did you get here? So what's the Ken
My
Island?
dad lived in Millington, Maryland,
Oh,
had a
so-
stroke.
Oh, okay.
And I had already retired after a run for Congress.
Yeah, we won't go into that story.
Yeah,
Let's
we're not
start a
going to go
scandal.
into
Let's start a
that.
scandal.
But I decided, well, I don't know how long Dad's going to live, so we moved
You're
back
down
here.
Okay. And so you were in Ken Island then, or you went to Millington?
No, I came out to Millington, stayed with them a little bit, and then we went ahead and rented a house in Ken Island. I looked around for a place to start a practice.
Now, so where are we now? We have a practice on Ken Island.
Yes.
What's the family situation?
Family situation, my youngest, or the only daughter I have, just got married in October.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That cost you a pretty penny, by the way.
I told the patient, I said, I'm going to try to lose 40 pounds before the wedding. And he looks at me and says, Doc, you're going to lose 40 pounds from your wallet.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, probably.
Having a daughter who I love, I know what you mean. I
Yeah.
know what you mean. So you're married, have a daughter, practices on Ken Island, and we're glad you're here. Come to our veterans group every Monday.
Try as
Enjoy
much
it.
as I
Okay.
can.
Was that not the quickest 30 minutes? I told you it'd be the quickest 30 minutes of your life.
We're done?
Okay, we're good. We're done. Thank you, Doc, for being
You're
with us.
welcome.
Okay.
Happy to do it.
My name's Fred McNeil. Thank you for watching QAC TV 7, my favorite show. Thank you for serving. My time's up. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next time.